Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, the place where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, say hi.
Hi, Gareth.
Hi, I'm
Hi,
back.
listeners.
I'm back.
You're back.
I'm in the physical world.
I
this
no
time.
longer have the option of.
No, you can't stretch
lying
out.
like a
I'm
lizard.
on the seat. I'm here now. You know.
Yeah.
I'm less infecty. You know. I'm less.
It's a small price to pay, to be honest, to
Yeah,
have this set up again.
I don't think I'd have been able to get to you. I felt absolutely rubbish, and I felt pretty rubbish most of that time.
That's how much this guy cares about this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. He, even though he felt rough as a badger's butthole, he still was here trying to, in spirit,
banging on the door,
remotely recording for you guys.
Well, you know, got nothing else to do really. Now, I've done very little this week when it comes to anything to do with animals or nature.
Okay.
Apart from watching butterflies in the garden when we've got I say paddling pool. It's quite a big paddling pool. It's big enough that I can sit in there and lay back nice and comfortably, and also my child can run around like a mad thing and swirl the whole thing up into like a sort of whirlpool.
A whirlpool going on,
which is quite fun actually. But at the same time, watching all the butterflies flying over the garden. We've had a few interesting ones, but it's just nice to see butterflies at the moment. You know, it's been a rubbish year for stuff like that. So it's just nice to see them hanging around. But that's about the extent of what I've been doing. I haven't ventured much from the house this last week, so.
Fair enough.
What are you've been obviously doing a bit more than
I've done
been
a bit
doing.
more.
Yeah.
So those of you that were paying attention to the Facebook page last week will have seen that I posted up that I ended my weekend with a little bit of fossil hunting. But basically, we went away to New Forest for the weekend. Myself, my partner, and our daughter, and I knew I wasn't going to get too much time for spotting wildlife, but I really had hope that I would have seen a few things just by accident and by default of being in the New Forest. I didn't see as much as I would have. Like, I was hoping like maybe I'd be lucky and see something like a white-tailed seagull or a boar or an adder. But what I did get, I feel very lucky for. So obviously, when you drive into the New Forest, there's some of the agricultural practices are a bit different. You've got
we know that the New Forest, the word forest doesn't actually denote anything to do with like trees.
No.
A forest doesn't actually have to contain any trees whatsoever.
No, of course not.
It's written into English law from, I think, Magna Carta or something like that. It's a common area for people to use. So forests were basically grown for timber, for hunting, for all sorts of things like that. And I think the New Forest as well is one of those areas where you have commons, where if you're a commoner, where you have to actually be part of a select group of people now, you have common land right usage, so you can graze animals at certain times a year on commons and things like that.
That's right. So yeah, you can. The commoners are allowed to use the land for grazing. Yeah. So what I saw immediately upon going in there is cows all over the road.
Yeah.
Pigs all over the road.
Yeah, it's the time of the year I think now where the pigs are being used in certain parts, isn't it?
And donkeys as well. I saw a lot. And then obviously you get your New Forest horses, which I don't know why. Maybe my childhood memories obviously not quite functioning at their highest, because I was imagining that they were a bit more like, like slightly taller, slimmer versions of our Exmoor ponies. But actually there's a lot of domestic kind of like more domestic coloration that you because they are domestic.
Also, the New Forest itself is not as like rugged and remote as it might appear in sort of name and everything. There's a lot of villages, there's a lot of towns, and there's
There
a
is,
lot
yeah.
of major roads through the New Forest.
Although my 4G capabilities would disagree with you, because for some
Well,
reason,
yeah.
considering how close you are to Bournemouth, Southampton, London, 4G
Nothing.
is rubbish there,
Yeah.
and 3G is rubbish too. So yeah, but what I did see, I'm quite happy with. I like seeing horses and those other animals as well. But also, Friday night about 10:20, 10:30, this vixen, fox, female fox, came out of the bushes of the house where we were staying, walked up the drive. I do have a bit of really grainy rubbish footage that I'm going to put up behind you. So if you don't see it, look to the left of the driveway towards the beginning, and then at the end of the video, look, you'll see it disappear off in the right side going out the drive. But yeah, very grainy, not particularly good. But because I've promised you guys red kite footage for ages and never been able
You've
to
gone
get
for
it.
another red
I
animal.
I thought, no, if I said I've seen a red fox and everyone says, "Where's your camp?" It's just come to my head that I could have put that in the news as a big cat. Damn it! I could have. That would have been the hoax of a century.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a red fox. And you just see it walk up the drive. Anyway, as a dog trainer and having worked with wolves and batted foxes and such, I know that from firsthand experience, as well as from like knowledge passed down, that dogs are creatures of habit.
Right.
So I pitched myself up in the conservatory at 10:20 the next night, and sure enough, about 10:20, 10:30, this vixen came out the same bush and took the same path up and across, and that's when I got the footage of her.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to see a fox that close up. That was really cool. Like I say, the horses and the agricultural animals. Got to see some red deer
Nice.
at a bit of a distance, a couple fields across. And we ended the weekend on at Barton-on-Sea, which is a beach south of the New Forest.
Mm-hmm.
Walking on fossil hunting, and we came up with the 3 teeth that you would have seen in that post, or the 3 teeth that you see here, which belong to shark, which is really cool. I've always wanted to find shark teeth, and I was starting to get a little bit like, oh no, and it's the light is fading. We're not going to find anything. And then Atta, my partner, she pulls out one really nice long one, and then a smaller version of that, which is the 2 you see in my hand. Then that chunkier one you see in my hand in the photo is the one that I found about 10 minutes later.
Like a weirdly worn down one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were in a somewhat, they was quite close, within about 10 feet of 10 feet kind of
Just in the gravel and
circle.
everything, was it? Or
Yeah. The best thing you can do on a beach, on that kind of beach, is you take a sieve down,
just go through the
sieve into the sand. There's an area that, I mean, we could go into this another time really, but you sieve the sand and it comes out. We didn't have that. We just had our fingers dredging through the sand there, and they appeared to us.
Oh,
yeah, really
that's pretty cool.
Really cool.
Well, that's a heck of a more interesting week than I had then.
Oh, and then we finished the night off. So we got home because we stayed on the beach a bit longer. We got home about 1 a.m. The next morning.
Yeah.
And of course, right now, as we record, last night when we got home, and as we record tonight, the Earth is moving through the part of its orbit where it meets the Perseid meteor shower.
Oh, into that.
Yeah, which is the best meteor shower of the year, 50 to 60 meters per hour, and the tails you will see will be of all different colors. Just fantastic. You want to look towards Perseus. I'm sure the Romans and all you New Age people will call the constellation something different. To me, it's Perseus. Look towards Perseus, and that's where these meteors will come from. So we got in about 1 a.m., went straight out to the back garden, and as soon as we were there, saw a really nice bright white one. But then the little one was pretty tired and cranky, so she wasn't enjoying it so much. So we took her in and we all fell asleep because it was a long drive. Yeah, but we're hoping to go out again tonight and have a look.
Oh, really cool.
Yeah, really nice natural history weekend. And fantasy weekend.
Show off. Right, well let's move into the news for this week then.
Let's do it.
It's the news!
Right, well, we're into this week's news. Aaron, take it away.
Every week, the weird and wonderful world of natural history offers up an embarrassment of riches when it comes to news and interesting stories. And though we here in the Natural History Cupboard are a small team, it's our aim to bring you guys up to speed and keep you updated on the kind of odd, exciting, funny, and good news coming out of that. So let's open up our Natural History Cupboard newsreel and dive on into the more interesting headlines. And I've got the first one, so I'll take it away. And the first one comes to us from Life Science, and that is the evolution of snakes takes a surprising twist. Cobras didn't come from where we thought they did. So, if you know anything about cobra evolution, you probably think, like many scientists do, and like I did until recently, with regards to this article, that they came out of Africa before spreading across the world. But this new study shows that actually, some 37.5 million years ago, they spread out of Asia. So, yeah, interesting one to look into.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start things off with bad news this week. The day we're recording this is unfortunately what's known in the, shall we say, the countryside sort of world as the glorious 12th, the 12th of August.
I've never heard it called this.
No,
we just
I think it should be known as the inglorious 12th.
Gruesome.
Or the gruesome 12th. Essentially what that is basically the start of the red grouse shooting season. And I'm fairly certain if we had Drew here with us doing this particular one, he would be, this would be right up his street. This is very much everything that Drew does to basically try and change people's opinions on. And it's something that we obviously very much agree with as well, is trying to change opinions on this. So the red grouse season is basically for people to shoot red grouse. Red grouse are not completely native to the UK.
No.
We should have our black grouse in a lot more places. They're the ones that are a lot harder to spot. But if you go outside of Wrexham, they're actually really easy to spot, as I've found out that one time. But the managed grouse moors themselves are completely destroyed ecosystems in a lot of ways. They're burnt. A lot of things like hen harriers and other birds of prey are persecuted just so that people can have some time blowing birds out of the sky with a shotgun to prove their, I don't know, manliness or something. I think it's a pathetic attempt at a sport, which is not really a sport, because
they're compensating for the lack of
it's something, a barbaric practice that is unfortunately written into so many of UK's laws that needs to change, and unfortunately today marks the beginning of that gruesome season. So yeah, not a great thing to report on, but I thought it's worth bringing to people's attention that this is the start of that season that people go out and blow birds out of the sky that have been bred in areas to be blown out of the sky, and for no other reason than that. So they're not even being eaten, if anything. So yeah. Anyway, bring us back up.
Very unfortunate. This might bring us back up. It's not good or bad news. It's just really interesting news, and it comes to us from Earth.com, and it's the news that Earth may now have only 6 continents, not 7.
Hang on, I thought there was 8.
Not according to
Zealandia as well.
Zealandia.
There was the newest discovered continent.
So it would bring it back. So
it would bring it back to 7 if there was 8.
If there is 8, then it brings it to 7.
And if not, it brings it down to 6.
Yeah. So if you grew up, and you're quite right, because I remember us talking about this. So
which continent have we lost? Who's put a continent somewhere and not remembered where it is?
So if we go with 7, you've got Africa, Antarctica, Asia, Australia, Europe, and North America and South America. But the geological processes that kind of push these apart and slam them together and all that, they haven't actually completed work. Apparently, according to this new study, they've not actually completed work on breaking up North America from Europe. We still might actually be connected.
Right, well, I'm going to bring things back up from my previous article with BBC News. Plans to restore West Wales Celtic rainforest. We've talked about this at various different points about trying to bring back the cold climate rainforest that stretches right the way down the west coast of the UK, in fact, the west coast of Africa, and then on the east coast of North and then South America, all part of that Atlantic rainforest. This area has basically been heavily degraded over the years and has led to, well, big patches of it in Wales just not being there. And they want to try and reinvigorate this. It's a lot easier in places like Snowdonia because it's national parks and areas like that. But places like Pembrokeshire, a lot of this habitat is completely gone from farmland. But according to the Wildlife Trust of South and West Wales, only 1% of the planet has conditions needed for this particular kind of rainforest, this cold climate rainforest, which is particularly important for fungi and ferns and things like that. And they want to restore areas of this around near Fishguard. And it's part of what's known as the Celtic rainforest, this rainforest that technically we're in the Celtic rainforest here in the southwest of England. Everyone should be as familiar with this rainforest. Adam Dawson has said, a conservation officer for this project, with this rainforest as the Amazon rainforest. We should be just as familiar with it. There's about 60 to 70% of the Amazon rainforest left. That's how much we have destroyed. But the Celtic rainforest, we've lost an awful lot more. But hopefully, there's plans to restore it.
Yeah, that's really good news. That would be cool. Very cool. So my next article again comes from Live Science, and this is news about great white sharks. Actually, come to think of it, by the time this news segment has ended, and from intro to then, there's been a lot of mention of sharks. But basically, the headline is Great White Sharks split into 3 populations 200,000 years ago, and they never mixed again. Except for one hybrid found in where do you think?
Mediterranean.
It's a really weird place to be, actually. The Bermuda Triangle. Maybe that's what made all the planes and the boats go, as this hybrid shark. But basically, yeah, scientists have actually found 3 genetically distinct great white shark populations that congregate in completely different areas of the oceans, and they do not interbreed. Now, the reason why this is newsworthy, I think, is because the impact that has on trying to keep that species safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, well, you're going to get people saying that there's sharks all over the place and great white sharks and megalodons and all sorts of things. But we're going to move on to the bastion of brilliant journalism that is Devon Live.
Oh, no.
Anyone who has encountered this newspaper, I say newspaper, it's pretty much all online, will know that they are well known for never letting a story be over sensationalized.
Yeah, no.
No, they're always accurate with their fact checks and make sure to not just guess things. Well, because of that, I can confirm 100% that according to their article, a family were shocked by spotting a big cat at a popular tourist attraction in Cornwall. Why it's in Devon Live, I don't know. Obviously, close to the border.
Slow news week in Devon.
So the couple believed they'd captured footage of a big cat, and of course it's black as well. Now, what was the population count for black jaguars and black leopards? It wasn't like the majority of them are not black.
Oh, I see.
Basically.
So I can't remember what the percentage of leopards are, but with jaguars, I believe it was 10% of jaguars globally. So that's obviously the Americas and captivity elsewhere, not exmoor.
So 10%.
Yeah, 25% of Costa Rican jaguar.
Right.
And this is not surprisingly not.
This is not Costa Rica.
We're not in Costa Rica.
No, and as much as the Celtic rainforest exists in some places, not in those sort of terms. So the couple believe they captured footage of a big cat. Like I say, we've looked at the percentages of jaguars, unlikely to be one of those, in a popular Cornwall manor garden, stating that it was definitely not your typical house cat. Maybe not their typical house cat. The video, which was recorded on Sunday the 4th of August at about 7:20, shows a black figure moving across the grass, moving across the grass, surrounding the Lanadrock house near Bodmin. Well, I mean, that tells you everything. The Beast of Bodmin. Near St. Neots. The woman who filmed the incident said it startled the deer so much to an extent they felt compelled to bolt. Now, you've looked at the picture. I've looked at the picture. And I don't know what they think their average house cat is, because that's an average house cat.
That's exactly what it is.
It's a house cat.
Yeah, if you look at the picture behind us, you'll notice that the cat's ears are. You can tell, even though it's a grainy photo, you can tell the cat's ears are pointed. That is typical domestic cat. The whole body proportion, even the way the body is being held, it screams domestic cat. And as Gareth, what is the plant in the background that's being compared to a tree?
You don't even. I mean, you don't even need to look at the cat itself. Just look at the fact that the cat is next to what is quite clearly some sort of bush or shrub. It's not a tree, because those leaves would be gigantic if they were. If that was a jaguar. And the fact that the deer have bolted. Deer bolt all the time.
Deer are very
That's what they've evolved to do. And some cats will, jump at them, but not this one. Also, I think if they were watching a jaguar just walk in front of them, did they not get attacked by it?
No.
Anyway.
But one thing I will say to this family's defense, and it's not about their identification.
Very good cider in Cornwall.
Yeah. I was going to say, well done for actually having the sense to pull out a camera and take a decent photo of it, rather than these photos that people try to pass off, and it's really grainy, but you can see it's a month.
Like your Fox image.
Grainy. Yeah, like my Fox image. Yeah. But yeah, that just about wraps it up for this week's installment of the Natural History Cupboard newsreel. Guys, if you have interesting articles or topics of interest,
if you've seen a large black cat,
if you've seen a large black cat, or if you would like to take a photo and use forced perspective to make your moggy look like a big black cat, feel free to do so and send it in. It'd be quite entertaining to see what the results of that are. But you can do that by any of the normal ways of contacting us, or if you're really smart, send your cat into a field of deer and hope the deer come down to us with your message.
Of course.
Yeah, but it's my week for doing the main article discussion, and I've changed mine somewhat last minute, so I'm going to be pulling this off kind of from the article itself rather than my show notes. And also I'm going to bring in an article that actually one of our followers has actually brought to light for me, which is kind of related and kind of not. It's a bit of over the border banter between Devon and Cornwall, I feel. But basically, this one comes to us from The Independent, and the headline is "Children Flee Water Screaming After 10-Foot Shark Swims into Cornwall Harbour." So Cornwall, what sharks could possibly be in Cornwall? Let's just like,
same sharks that you find around the rest of the UK.
But let's just play devil's advocate for our listeners and for the photographers. What species could there be?
Okay, instantly you've got things like the smaller species, like was it starry-headed, starry smoothhound or whatever it is, a really pretty little shark, taupe, dog sharks. You could get I would hesitate to say a very lost blue mako or poor beagle shark in a harbour. But the one I would probably put my money on, and the one that 99% of the time is mistaken for a great white, basking shark.
Yeah. So you pretty much covered all the ones it could possibly be. But basically, a 10-foot shark.
Oh, thresher.
Oh, fresher. Yeah, well done. Yeah, sorry.
But they would also be a very lost one in a harbour.
Yeah. But basically, 10-foot shark swam into this harbour. Basically, kids start screaming, start rushing out the water. I can picture it already. In fact, I was a little bit wound up by this article because everything about this article screams at some of the British institutions that have thoroughly and abysmally and embarrassingly failed our nation to such a degree that there are generations of instilled fear of anything wild, particularly a shark. the media, you are so guilty
Are
of
we technically the
sensational.
media?
Well, hopefully we're new
We're
media.
better.
We're better
We're-
media.
yeah.
But the media, as an institution, you guys are so guilty of sensationalizing and fear mongering that this species of shark could cause this amount of terror. The education system, you have taught nothing of value about about the natural world,
I do.
especially the. Well, yeah, yeah, but you're a specialized course. These kids are probably not the age that would be with you guys.
True.
By the time you get to that age, if you're not learning about the animals around you, that's on you. That's your fault. But at primary school, when we learn about about ponds and stuff, and when we go to on seaside visits, why you're not teaching about sharks and what the local sharks look like. So you're failing, and you've not just failed these kids, you failed their parents and probably their grandparents and their great grandparents, generations of people who are completely naive and clueless towards our local sharks. Because this 10-foot shark that was so scary was a juvenile basking shark. So a
Oh.
basking shark, not only is this a juvenile, a baby, but this is a basking shark. A basking shark is a filter feeding plankton eater that is no threat to anybody.
It's a magnificent derp.
Magnificent derp, yes. You can hear more about our magnificent derp by checking out Drew's creature feature that we'll link. But I just mean this is so sad because I can picture the images. The kids not at fault at all. To the kids, this is going to be a big animal. 10 foot's a big animal. So the kids are screaming, running out, probably screaming shark, shark. But I bet you anything, those parents are on that beach screaming as well. The panic I can envision from these people would have been one of screaming to get the child rushed over to you, and then like making sure the child's all right. I bet I would, not sure I'd bet a month's wage, but I'd bet a substantial, like kind of substantial reasonable. I'd I'd have a bet with someone that very few people, if any, actually took their kid like under their wing, walked to the shore, and said, "That is a basking shark.
Look,
This is
Jimmy."
what they do. Isn't it beautiful? And this is what they do. They're no harm to you, but it's best to keep your distance, to not disturb it, and not risk each other's safety. I I'm not really going into the article much because it's
Where was it?
sensationalism.
Which harbour, by the way?
Let's just have a quick gander again. Where was it? St. Ives Harbour.
Oh, right.
So I was
right
actually
the way down then.
yeah. I was in St. Ives. Almost probably about 11 months ago. 10, 11
Did you go
months
to
ago.
get some knives?
I did not go to get some knives. I did get ice cream in a thunderstorm though.
Ah.
That was good. But yeah, it approached the harbour at 9 p.m. on Tuesday, and it hung around. There was around 30 children and teenagers fled the water when they spotted the ominous dorsal fin around 20 foot away in clear blue water, and there was some really nice photos.
So it's 20 foot away,
Mm-hmm.
and it's quite clearly a basking shark
Mhm.
because the dorsal fin is very clear.
It's one of the
It's
of the
like
ways that you tell them apart from the great white, because obviously both sharks are pretty big.
Yeah.
Although basking shark is much bigger. But because it's a big shark shaped thing, it gets confused with great white. But as soon as you see that dorsal fin, and if schools were actually teaching,
But we
that
don't
this is what you can
technically
see.
get. I mean, this is the thing. I believe that there are great whites off the UK.
Yeah,
I think it would be foolish to think that there aren't. But look at the numbers. You see basking sharks every year.
Mhm.
No one has ever recorded a great white in the UK.
No.
So it's a bit like saying, well, I'm fairly certain that was a Yeti, or it could have been a yak.
It is like that. Yeah, it is.
Because we know one of them definitely is here. The other one is sort of mythological at this point. I mean, probably actually far less, I suppose.
I think it's only a matter of time before we get a great white shark reported here. But until then, I mean, the statistics stand in place, don't
Yeah,
they? Like,
and you are more likely to die from, I don't know, like I say, a cow, a car, a vending machine. what is it, icicles, I think, falling off a roof or another thing that are all technically more dangerous. You're more likely to be killed in the car driving to the beach to get in the water. In fact, you're probably more likely to drown in the water
Yeah.
or choke on some chips or something, or probably even being hit by a low-flying herring gull than you are from being killed by a shark, and certainly a basking shark.
Here's one of my, I don't know if it's one of my least favorite paragraphs or the favorite. I don't know if it's the worst
Okay.
or the best paragraph in this article, but it says basking sharks can grow up to 26 feet, then in brackets 7.9 meters long. But according to Andy Narbet of Tiger Lily Boat Trips and Ives, they're harmless. According to everyone, they're harmless.
No,
Everybody.
actually,
Apart from like,
did they interview the plankton? Because they
oh,
would have
that's
said
true. Yeah,
those terrifying monsters just eat us up like nothing.
no one takes into consideration how the plankton
Yeah,
feel.
no one
It
ever
asks
asks
plankton.
them.
But okay, apart from the media and the education system that's ignorant to them and these kids, like anybody that knows anything about sharks knows basking sharks are harmless.
Yeah.
Like it's just so it's all so ridiculous. But he was quoted. I quite like this quote. He says, "It was incredible to see it so close. It is very rare as we haven't seen any basking sharks for some years in the bay." He does then follow up with the poor kids who were in the water must have only been 20 feet from it.
I'd have
And they didn't
loved to have been
realize it
20
was
feet from a basking
harmless.
shark.
Didn't realize it was harmless, and so they began screaming and got straight out of the sea. Now, I do feel sorry for the kids to an extent, but these are things that the media and the education system, and to a lesser extent, because the parents are victims of their own educational upbringing, the parents too. These are three parties
Yeah.
all involved that could have turned that situation around and turned it into a learning opportunity.
But I suspect as well, just as with our big cat story, which is not a big cat, this is sensationalized because if you have a story of large sharks seen off the coast is actually not dangerous in the slightest, it doesn't grab as many clicks or as many headlines as kids running from shark that's in the water, that sort of thing. It doesn't it's all down to the media portrayal of these things, and then not bothering, like you say, to look and come up with any information. So thankfully, I think if you're one of the enlightened people who are probably watching or listening to this, you would be aware that basking sharks are not dangerous.
Spread the word.
Yeah. The next time somebody comes up with a bizarre thing like that, just tell them they are more likely to die from probably, I don't know.
Getting angry at a vending machine
Yeah.
when you're trying to get the chocolate out and it's stuck and you're shaking it and then it falls on top of you.
The more people die from Skeletric related incidents. I think there's like 3 a year,
Wow.
like globally. I mean, so yeah, you're very unlikely to be picked off, certainly by a basking shark. Apart from that one person, I think there was one fatality, wasn't there?
I think it was
Because
just one.
it
Yeah.
landed on him.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, you're very unlikely.
And just to finish this off on a light note, if you cross the border out of Cornwall into Devon, a very special shark has been landed by a fisherman as well. So this was sent in to us from Ren, one of our followers, who I believe is actually a new follower, I think on YouTube, because I recognise the name. He says, "Hi, this is this is the second email I've sent in to the podcast, though previously spelling cupboard wrong. So I hope you enjoy the news article." So yeah, you got it to us this time. And this one comes to us from BBC News, and it's fisherman lands first ever lost Lego shark.
Oh, brilliant! That's off that beach where a container years ago fell off the side of a ship.
It's off the coast. It's South
Yeah.
Penzance, and it was it was in one of his fishing nets,
Yep.
20 miles south of Penzance.
So essentially, there's an entire Lego container that had, interestingly enough, aquatic themed Lego in it. The container fell off the side of the ship in the 90s, and all of this Lego, which includes, to this day, still washes up, as that Lego shark proves, little boats, octopuses, sharks, scuba tanks, scuba like spear guns, and all of these things wash up occasionally on the beach because the container is still down there. There's a Facebook page that's really quite good to look at called Lego Lost at Sea.
Yeah, I was literally just about to say, I didn't realize there's an actual project called Lego Lost at Sea.
And it's really fascinating. I've loved it for years, and some of the Lego a lot of the stuff that is in that was retired in the early 2000s. So some of them are collector's pieces, especially because they've come from that particular incident.
That's amazing. So it says that the actual project Lego Lost at Sea confirmed the piece to be the first ever reported shark from the 51,800 Lego sharks lost off the Tokyo Express on cargo ship on 13th of February 1997.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So
yeah, really cool.
Although, so he's from Devon, so he's in Plymouth, but actually the shark was found in Cornwall.
Yeah, they're down in Cornwall. Yeah. It's a Cornish Lego shark. Right, well, let's move into our creature feature, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's the creature feature.
Right, well, we're into this week's creature feature. Aaron, start you off. If I was to
I thought you were going to say, Aaron, take it away.
Aaron, take it away. It's your
unprepared.
it's your turn this week. You're not ready.
No.
Right. Well, if I was to ask you to name, just put you on the spot now. Can you name all species of penguin? And do you think you could name all of them?
I can't name all of them.
No?
No, I think I would probably go for the really obvious ones. So it'd be chinstrap, Humboldt, rockhopper, emperor, king. The problem is the next one on my list would be the one that you don't really want me to say. I think
you can say it. You can say
fairy penguin.
All right. Well, we'll come back to that.
I see.
So
I think it's all.
It might be. I did anticipate that, and my next line that I wrote down is, well, that might be stretching it, but can you tell me how many species of penguin there are?
I can't tell you that.
No, take a guess.
I'm gonna say that there are. Let's go with. It's gonna embarrass me entirely. 11, 12.
Ooh, you're close. It's 18.
Yeah,
18
not that
species.
close.
Well,
for a zookeeper, that's not that close.
But you didn't work primarily with penguins.
I actually never had the privilege of working with penguins at all. But
all right. First, let's bring it.
Take part in the penguin parade.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, you worked with penguins. You worked with more species of penguin than I have.
Walked them around the zoo.
All right.
Once.
Well, let's see if you can bring it back then. Can you tell me which is the largest and which is the smallest species?
Emperor penguin.
Yep.
And I think I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it right. Adelis penguin, is that
not
right?
the Adelie penguin?
No. Okay, little penguin.
Yeah, it's the little or the fairy penguin. It is the smallest species of penguin, and it's what we're looking at this week.
I've just realised that I named Adelie, and Adelie wasn't on the list of penguins that I know. So
yeah, no, you also didn't say emperor as well, or king.
I'm sure I said emperor and king.
Did you?
Yeah, pretty sure.
We'll relook at the tape. So yeah, we're looking this week at the smallest species of penguin, the fairy or blue penguin or little blue penguin. You can give it whatever name you like. There's a multitude of names for this bird.
Yeah.
And it's my number one penguin. It's my favorite species of penguin. Always has been. Just
any particular reason why, or are you going to go into that?
Well, I'll go into it in a little bit, but it's basically the penguin that I saw when I was growing up, because we used to go down to Victor Harbour every now and again in South Australia, and there was a colony of them there. So you'd go there of a night to see them coming back to their burrows.
That's cool.
And if you were lucky, you saw them during the day, out at sea or sort of things like that. But they were also the penguin that was most common in Australian zoos. And I think they are in quite a few.
That probably makes sense, though.
There was, I don't think there's any left in the UK. There was one at Bristol Zoo a very long time ago, because most of theirs died, unfortunately, I think, of avian malaria. They had them in their penguin area, and they had one fairy penguin left, and he was apparently just very secretive because he felt sort of
exposed
on his own. He was in with a bunch of other species of penguin, but he was on his own.
Was that not the year that Longley lost their entire flock of penguins.
I think it might have been a year or two before that, but
Right.
yeah, avian malaria is quite bad for penguins, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
a
it is.
lot of collections around the UK and around the world have lost penguins because of that. Saying that though, that I've never worked with fairy penguins, but they are certainly one of my favourite species.
They're
I've
cool.
got up
They
close
are
with them.
cool species.
And they have huge personalities for such a small bird. It's that whole little small bird, bitey sort of thing that I think makes them so cool. So let's look at the fairy penguin, shall we? Um, First off, let's clear up the biggest misconception whenever it comes to penguins, something that I bet you've had to encounter, especially when you were doing penguin stuff at Edinburgh.
Oh, I only
And
did the penguin parade once. Have you ever
okay,
seen it?
yeah, I've
Right,
been there
okay.
for it twice, I
For
think.
those that don't know, the penguins are trained to literally follow you out the enclosure on this route around the zoo and then back in.
And one of them's
But
a member of the Royal Norwegian
he is,
Army, isn't he, or
oh,
something?
sir, I'll have to, I'll have to bring that in the Johnny Emos bit because I can't remember his
Fair
name.
enough.
Nigel? It begins with an N, I think. It begins with an N, I think.
It's not very Norwegian.
But I was a primate keeper at Edinburgh for my
Yeah.
short, like, seasonal time there. So
Well, it's a misconception I bet you've been asked, and that is that all penguins exist in the Antarctic.
yes,
Nowhere else.
yes, I have.
Whenever you think of penguins, you think of them in snow and ice, and unfortunately, it's still in the media. That's the way things are portrayed. It's because it's easy, to just do that, and even more ridiculous is when you see them put together with polar bears because people can't distinguish between Antarctic and Arctic.
Yeah.
Well, let's clear this up. Of the 18 species of penguin, only 2 species of penguin live in Antarctica year round, and
Which
that's
is the Emperor and the Kings, isn't it?
Adelie.
Emperor, and Adelie.
Yes.
Okay.
All the other
There we go.
species of penguin live in the southern hemisphere.
Yep.
So that is the one thing penguins have in common. They all live in the southern hemisphere. The only ones that just about go above it are the Galapagos penguins, and that's only because the
Okay.
Galapagos Islands are technically
Just
above
on
the
equator.
equator.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And Drew and Jess have seen those in the wild, and have technically seen penguins in the northern hemisphere.
Well,
But anyway, penguins live in the southern hemisphere. Only 2 of them live in Antarctica year round, and the species that we're looking at, the little blue penguin or fairy penguin, only lives in New Zealand and Australia.
okay.
But you'll find penguins in South America. You'll
Yes, you
find
will.
them on all of the islands around the southern hemisphere, out at sea. So the Falklands is a brilliant place for things like king penguins and a lot of those species stopping there. Magellanic penguins, and then in Africa you've got places like Boulders Beach in South Africa, where you've got the Blackfoot penguin. You've got
Blackfoot penguin. Yeah, I know that one.
the Humboldt penguin as well.
Yep.
Basically, anywhere around the southern hemisphere is where you'll find penguins. So Australia, New Zealand, South America, South Africa, and any of the islands around the place is where you'll find these guys. But specifically, because they're like cold water. So their feathers are specifically evolved to cope with being in water because they're waterproof, but they're also insulated so they can be in freezing cold water. And the Southern Ocean is freezing cold. And so they can cope with living on a hot place, a hot country like Australia, South America, South Africa, but they live mostly in cold water and
Right,
then come
yeah.
back to land in hot places. So that's clearing up that misconception, hopefully, for anyone who's unaware. So what is a little penguin or fairy penguin? Or, well, it depends on the name, basically. It depends on your location and what you've been basically raised to say. So it's known as the little blue penguin in Australia, but it's mostly used in New Zealand. The blue penguin, it's another name used in Australia and New Zealand, but mostly New Zealand.
Okay.
It's got a Maori name, which I will butcher now. It's called the Korora,
Okay.
which I've probably butchered. And it's also known as the fairy penguin in Australia, although that it seems that even though that's what I've always called it, that's actually a bit of an outdated name, and it doesn't get called it as much. But most of the people I know about, like have talked about them, still call them fairy penguins.
Just out of interest, and the answer is probably no, but it's just for my interest more than anything else. Do you know what the Maori word directly translates to?
No, I couldn't find
No,
that
fair enough,
translation
fair
for it. But I do know what their scientific name means.
Okay.
So their scientific name, Eudyptula minor. I'm guessing you could probably figure out what the minor bit means.
Massive.
Yes, gigantic bloody penguin. No, it basically means, it's a Greek word meaning good little diver.
Okay.
So that's Eudyptula. So small, good little diver, basically, for Eudyptula minor.
U is good
Yes, I think,
because I know that Tolkien coined a word eucatastrophe, which is the
catastrophe.
Yeah, that's what the eagles were.
Ah,
Yeah, eucatastrophe.
well, these are very much the opposite of the eagles. They're tiny.
Yeah.
So they're in fact the smallest species of penguin. You could quite easily hold one on your hand, and hopefully, if I edit it in, I will have a picture of one on my hand.
That would be cool.
Which they're about 30 centimeters tall, in height, about 1.5 kilos at the most. And when you compare this to an emperor penguin, which we don't have a picture of an emperor penguin, but I'm sure.
Shame.
We'll try and put a picture of an emperor penguin. They are around 40 kilos in weight and about 1 meter tall.
Yes.
So I suppose you could compare it to a 4-year-old. It's probably a good comparison, and you can see why the name the little penguin is why this applies to this tiny species of the 18 penguin species that are out there. So, distribution. Like I said, this is a species that you'll find in New Zealand and Australia, specifically around the southern coast of Australia, heading up into the west a little bit, up on the western coast, up towards Perth, and then up onto the eastern coast as well. So think of basically just the bottom half of Australia in that colder water. You'll find them over in New Zealand as well, around the Southern Island, and the same sort of distribution as well, but in more sort of fragmented bits, if anything. Now, during the day, you would be lucky if you ever saw these birds. I've been very lucky once, and I'd say it was late summer, or into the summer, so it was lighter evenings. But I have seen one in broad daylight in the wild. But if you were to go looking for them most of the time, normally you would have to be out on a boat and be very lucky to obviously find them in the vastness of the ocean where they'll be. But during the day, during the evening, they'll come back to land to nest and to basically sleep in their burrows. They've been recorded out at sea diving to depths of 72 meters, which is impressive for a tiny little bird like that.
Yeah.
They can hold their breath for up to 90 seconds as well, which I know I certainly can't hold my breath that long. Certainly not after
a minute and a half.
Not after having COVID for that that length of time. I'm fine now. Just can't hold my breath for that long. But yeah, they can at extremes dive down 72 meters, which is incredibly impressive. However, this isn't the majority of when they dive. Most of the time, they're actually in the surface waters, is where their food is majority going to be. The most of the time, they only tend to go from about 2 to 20 meters down.
Okay.
But 20 meters is still a heck of a distance down for a bird that's only 30 centimeters tall. But they are so streamlined that they can move through the water like a little rocket. And they'll move together as a little flock, looking for all sorts of fish, squid, krill, any kind of crustaceans, eels, even jellyfish, which they'll snap up with their really sharp little beak. They are perfect for catching hold of their fish, and their tongue as well has got backward-facing barbs on it.
Oh yeah.
So they hang on
of course.
to their prey with it, which they'll then swallow down. It makes it a lot easier for them to swallow it down.
Head first they swallow usually, isn't it?
Yeah. They'll rearrange the food
because
to
otherwise
go down easiest.
The scales of the fish get caught on the way down. So
Yeah. So of an evening, these birds will start to return under cover of darkness to their burrows to sleep or to breed. And these burrows can be just basically holes in the rocks. Sometimes they won't go back to their burrows and they'll just find a place to rest up over the evening and go to sleep somewhere under cover. And they can occasionally get knocked off course as well. I've been on the edge of the Coorong, which is a massive sort of marshland area in South Australia, that goes directly onto the Southern Ocean, and there'd been some massive waves coming in, like big enough that there were dead penguins all across this beach, and all of
Wow.
them had broken necks and broken bones. They'd just been churned up in the surf and thrown onto the beach.
But did you know a meter cubed of water weighs about a ton?
Yeah.
So I mean, when I've been down surfing on Croyd, I always notice because of the way that wave forms. It sounds stupid, but depending on what's on the ocean floor and what's the environment that's around it, creates the type of wave you get.
Yeah, yeah.
And on Croyd, it just so happens with the sandbars and the rock reef to the side and stuff, and the shape of the bay, it creates this wave that kind of barrels. But as it barrels,
Like a dump.
it dumps on you, and
Yeah.
it's heavy. You feel like you've been through a washing machine.
But that's, I mean, essentially, I think that's what happened to these poor birds.
Mm.
But yeah, sometimes they won't make it back. There are predators that they have to watch out for as well: sharks, seals, as well as occasionally large fish. Very occasionally. Most of the time, it's going to be land-based predators they have to watch out for. Hence why they come back like clockwork at dark, because it's the safest time to make for their burrows so that things don't pick them off.
Yeah, right.
And that's what's made them such a tourist attraction in Australia and New Zealand as well. So places like Phillip Island, they have entire areas of the beach that are just sectioned off, and it's known as the Penguin Parade. They basically, you can go there and sit in a grandstand and watch
Wow.
as the penguins come in. Now, I've never been to Phillip Island, but I've seen enough videos of it to know that that's what loads of tourists go and do.
Yeah, right.
Victor Harbour, you'd just go and sit down there. Basically, Victor Harbour was an old whaling port, and you've got an island that sits just off the coast, and there's a little wooden jetty that goes out to the island, and you can go out there, and that's where the penguins are. And you basically, they cordon off bits so that the penguins can come past, and you just stand there and watch the penguins come in of an evening.
That's cool.
Which is really cool. And we also did the same in New Zealand. On honeymoon, myself and my wife, we basically near Dunedin, I think it was Dunedin, we went to an industrial area down by a port. We got some fish and chips. We were in our camper van. This was actually really nice. We just sort of pulled up next to this massive factory sort of thing on one side. It looked really sort of, industrial one side, and you got this lovely little sandy beach on the other, and the penguins just slowly came in, and we just sat there and watched the penguins of an
That's
evening
really
coming in.
cool. They're not bothered by people's presence.
No, they're so used to everything there. The fact that it was a really noisy industrial area
Yeah.
didn't phase the birds at all, because
That's really cool.
they just know what's going on. And a lot of the time, they're not even phased by people's houses in the area. And you will occasionally get the birds like wandering into people's gardens, especially new chicks, basically. So yeah, these birds have a breeding season during the Australian winter, which is the best time of the year for them to be able to lay their eggs. But they can breed year round, and they're actually known for being able to breed relatively quickly out of most of the penguin species. And in fact, they've got the shortest incubation period of 35 days. They can end up having 2 or 3 clutches in a really good year. The baby penguins are born. They're obviously small little balls of fluff at the bottom of these burrows. For the first 8 weeks of their life, they've got it cushy. Mum and dad will go and basically take different shifts. One will take the night shift, one will take the day shift, going out to sea, filling up on food, coming back, feeding the chick, swapping over, vice versa. But after about 8 weeks, they get a bit of a reality check. The parents just leave them.
They don't kick them out of the boat. They
Nope,
just leave.
they just go.
Oh, right,
they just
fair.
go off
Okay.
to sea and say,
Ta-ra.
you've got 2 choices. You either starve in a burrow, or you go and learn how to be a penguin. So, they basically then have to make that decision to go and be a penguin. So the chicks will then spend the next 12 months traveling much further than they will for the rest of their lives, and basically learning how to be a penguin, finding new ways to find food, finding new burrows, and places to basically call home. Then they'll sort of come back to their home colony. Think of it a bit like a penguin gap year, I suppose.
Yeah, walkabout.
Yeah, a little bit.
Australian walkabout.
So other than breeding seasons, penguins have one other time of the year that they tend to spend an extended period of time on land. Can you think what that is, Aaron? And I always think it's the funniest time to see a penguin.
I would say during the molt.
Yeah. So penguins go through what's called a catastrophic molt. And in the case of these guys and every other species of penguin, it's very different to most other kinds of birds. As a seabird, they've got to be watertight.
Yeah.
They've got to have perfectly pristine feathers most of the time. Otherwise, they won't keep the heat in and their body will get wet and they will end up getting sick and dying. So when these guys molt, they will molt all in one hit. So they will take the hit of spending about 2 weeks or about 17 days on land, molting all of their feathers out. And they just basically floof up into this sort of ball. I'm assuming you've seen other penguins do this, and they just turn into this ridiculous mass of feathers. They'll then molt out all of those, and new ones will come in underneath. Now that means they have to sit there on land and obviously not find any food. They can lose half of their body weight in this time. So beforehand, they tend to eat 25% of their body weight beforehand to bulk themselves up as much as they can.
Yeah.
By doing this, it means that they can molt out completely. So normal birds, an eagle, a parrot, sparrow, pigeon, gull, you name it, ones that are basically flying around and can find food wherever and don't have to be as waterproof, they can molt their feathers out in bits.
Yeah,
ones and
you
twos.
often see them preening themselves and cleaning and plucking.
But it's a definite disadvantage of being a seabird.
Yeah.
Because you can't do that easily. And especially if you can't fly, you can't quickly return to land to basically, preen yourself.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So it's quite a perilous time for penguins, is the molt, and it's known as a catastrophic molt. So there are other threats to penguins, obviously, other than things out at sea that might eat them. A lot of penguins around the world have basically been heavily exploited by humans.
Yes.
As you could probably guess, humans are #1 cause of all penguin and most other animal issues.
No.
Yeah. Between the 1800s and the 1900s, they were shot for their skins and also for sport. I don't get what sport there is to be had in a bird that can't fly away.
I have this argument all the time about any type of hunting. If you hunt to feed yourself, fine, but calling it a sport, I don't like. Coming from a sport background, like before I was a zookeeper, my diploma and degree was in sports, and I've always been a fan of sports.
Yeah.
Sport means that there's a chance that even the underdog can win.
Yep.
And it doesn't end in death.
I don't see it.
It's not intended to anyway.
It's not even a gloriously sized bird, if it was if there were colonies of emperor penguins and they could move super fast or something, that would actually pose some sort of like, oh, I can't catch them easily. But yeah, tiny little penguins. Yeah. Anyway, they were shot for their skins as well. I mean, that would have been an awful lot of penguins to make anything halfway decent. They became protected, however, in Australia in the 1930s. So they did get some protection. However, there was pushback. As with anything like this, whenever people tend to put in some sort of law to protect an animal, there'll be some group, someone who'll go, no, I don't want that. There was actually an open season pushed for by mutton bird hunters. So a mutton bird is a type of storm petrel, basically.
We've covered them before in some way.
Yeah, we've looked at them, yeah.
Was it when we were doing one of the snake species or?
But they live in burrows as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there was actually a petition to have an open season on fairy penguins because their argument was they competed with mutton birds for burrows and they wanted them reduced in numbers, so it would mean that there would be more mutton birds for them to hunt.
The logic of some people, or the anti-logic of some people.
It's
really
brilliant.
Do you know what? I'd have more respect for these people if they just came out and said, I just like killing things. I'm a nasty bit of work. At least be honest that you're a villain.
I don't get the point in hunting mutton birds as well. There's not much meat on them.
No,
And I get that seaside communities, that's probably what they had to survive on. But the fact that there was an industry in hunting mutton birds, it's just weird. So, humans aside, probably the biggest threat posed to fairy penguins and to most small animals, especially in Australia and New Zealand, are things like feral dogs, feral cats, foxes, rats, mice, anything like that that is not meant to be in those places.
Yeah, yeah.
And they'll basically catch and eat them on their way back to the nests
Yeah.
and to the burrows. Now, take special note of the fact that I said New Zealand, because I'll point back to that in a bit,
Okay.
as to well, them encountering predators in New Zealand. But in Australia, they're actually a little bit more aware of themselves. But I'll come back to that in a minute. So other big problems that they face, and it's pretty much the same thing that most of our seabirds face all around the world, is climate change, and that is obviously pushing fish stocks further and further out to sea.
Yeah.
Overfishing is not helping as well. It means the birds are having to go further to eat the same amount and probably try and eat a bit more, but then end up starving by coming back, not being able to feed their chicks enough. It's a whole knock-on effect. So climate change is yet another way that we are messing around with things. And interestingly enough, though, there are a lot of places that have combated some areas of these threats. Obviously, climate change is a bigger threat that lots of people are trying to combat. But things like foxes, cats, dogs, those sort of things getting into these colonies, there are some really good initiatives that have happened over the years. There have been lots of places that have tried different things, from predator-proof fencing around certain beaches.
Yeah.
You can't 100% guarantee something's not going to swim around.
Yeah.
But in certain areas, they've actually brought in Maremma sheepdogs, which are an Italian breed of sheepdog used to keep wolves away in mountainous areas. And they're the big fluffy ones that you'd let in with the herd of the sheep, and they just sit there with the sheep and scare anything away. Well, they've used those not to keep wolves away, but to keep foxes away on these beaches.
Yeah,
and they'll patrol the area to scare foxes away. So, as I said, I was going to touch on the differences between Australian and New Zealand penguins. A new study, only going back as far as 2016, so this is complete news to me in looking this up for this creature feature, has basically showed that the relatedness of fairy penguins in New Zealand and Australia are actually somewhat intermingled across their range, and show that they should actually now be classed as two separate species. So they're separate, but the same. So the birds themselves are found across the southern portion of Australia, like we said, and also across the southern islands of New Zealand. However, the genetic studies have shown that the New Zealand species, or the New Zealand birds, they're broken into lots of little populations.
Yeah, okay.
Most of them, however, are what are considered the New Zealand ones. There is a small population around Dunedin, which is on the southeastern coast of the Southern Island, that is actually genetically the same as the Australian ones.
Okay.
Which is interesting, because that's a opposite side of New Zealand to where Australia is. There's a 1,500-mile sort of gap of ocean between the two. So that means at some point in the penguins' history, there were some of the Australian penguins had moved to New Zealand and vice versa. However, they basically had died out in a lot of these places, probably through human interaction, whether it's the New Zealand ones coming to Australia and not being able to live as easily as the Australian ones, and the Australian ones going to New Zealand and taking the place where there wasn't any of the New Zealand penguins. For whatever reason, humans in both those places, whether it's the Aborigines or the Maori,
Settlers,
or or settlers. So, I mean, we're talking long before a lot of humans even made it to some of these places.
Oh, right. Okay.
So,
Okay.
there is, however, an interesting difference between the two, not just genetically, but behavioral as well. The Australian fairy penguin will mass offshore. Basically, they'll group together beforehand and then all decide at once to come in. Think of it similar to whenever you see penguins on an ice floe, all bunching up at the edge and waiting for that one to jump in
Yes.
before them all going in. Well, think of it the reverse, them all waiting to come onto land.
Bravery in numbers.
Yeah.
Strength in numbers. Yeah.
And that's for a very simple reason. It's a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
There are predators on Australia that could quite easily snap them up. And this is long before humans even got there. You've got quolls, Tasmanian devils, large snakes, monitor lizards. All of those sort of things could quite easily grab a penguin as they come up. And then you've got dingoes who came with the first Aboriginals. And then you've got foxes, dogs, and cats. So the Australian penguins are actually a little bit more prepared for dealing with land-based predators than the New Zealand ones are. Because the New Zealand birds, they simply don't do this. They just sort of wander up the beach whenever they feel like it. And that's because they evolved on an island where there were no ground-based predators. Everything was aerial-based or in the sea behind them. So
of course,
they can walk out of the water whenever they want. So this behavior never evolved with them. And it's meant that they've acted very differently. And it's actually meant that the New Zealand penguins have suffered more from introduced dogs, cats, foxes, all of those sort of things into New Zealand, like a lot of their birds have. Interestingly enough, though, I didn't know this when I went to New Zealand. I've never seen a New Zealand species of fairy penguin.
Yeah.
The ones that I saw were Australian ones.
I was gonna ask you that because where you said the Australian ones were, I'm pretty sure you said earlier
That's
on
where we
that's
were.
where you were. Yeah.
And I looked at this and went, damn,
Balls.
I've never seen one. And I was thinking back going, no, we went to that place and to that place. No, we didn't see any penguins there. No, we saw seals there. Oh, I was like, yeah, it's just unchecked a bird from my sort of list of having seen stuff in the wild.
Well, you're gonna have to save up and go to New Zealand.
I'm gonna have to go back to New Zealand. Believe me, yeah, if I could, I would. So it's basically an evolutionary holdover for those birds, which actually probably made them a bit more successful.
Yeah.
Is that whole waiting until everyone's together as a group and then moving in and staying a little bit safer. And so, looking at the new genetic evidence, they've basically looked at calling them two separate species. So, the Australian ones they want to call Eudyptula novaholandii, which is basically New Holland, which is the old name for Australia. And then keep the New Zealand ones as Eudyptula minor.
Okay.
Which would basically completely make them two separate species.
I was going to say that's two separate species, not subspecies.
Yeah, so that would make them rather interesting.
So there's enough. So Adam, just to backtrack quickly, so I don't take us off on too much of a tangent. They see enough diversity between the Australian ones and the New Zealand ones to consider that they are two completely separate subspecies, closely related, but two completely separate species.
Yeah.
Closely related but separate. What about those populations that you said are in New Zealand? They're genetically diverse.
Oh, they're not that genetically diverse. They're just
not enough
broken
to be
up.
subspecies.
No. I mean, this study basically puts it that the Australian ones and that small population in New Zealand are the Australian ones, and then the other ones would just be those. So technically, New Zealand's got a whole brand new species of penguin. They've already got the Fiordland crested and like 2 or 3 other species of penguin actually that live there, because their islands go further down towards Antarctica than Australia do. But these birds are genetically different enough and also behaviorally different enough as well. But yes, that's the fairy penguin, an absolute little blue penguin. Like I say, I've always called them fairy penguins. I think I'll just continue to call them fairy penguins just because it's the name that's stuck in my head. But yeah, they're absolutely awesome little birds. They deserve far more like attention, I think, than their bigger cousins do in some ways. Um, and penguins are not just these all black and white birds. I mean,
And they
they're
don't all
blue. They're
behave the
blue for a
same.
start.
They
Which
do not
I've
all behave the same.
no, God no,
Yeah.
no. I mean, that's the one thing I didn't touch on is that they are blue. They get the name the little blue penguin because they are this silvery blue color on top, white underneath. They all have that same sort of counter shading. So if you're a predator above them in the water and looking down, all you see is dark blue.
Mm.
If you're below them and looking up, you see that light white color of the sky. So yeah, they are the same with most penguins, the same sort of counter shading color, but that's the same
Yeah.
with most marine creatures.
Yeah.
So yeah, fantastic little creature, and I really like him.
Blue's quite a rare pigment to have in fauna anyway. It
Yeah.
tends to be the reptiles, which I include birds within that superclade. But
They do it. They do it well.
yeah,
Hmm.
very cool bird.
Right. Well, let's move on to our emails for this week.
Yeah.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email.
Right. Well, we're into this week's emails. And we're going to start things off as per usual with last week's question, which, if you remember, was a poll. We looked at what is the best big cat. Aaron, you've got the results. I mean, how annoyed are you, or we're talking you're going to be taking issue with people, or what?
Do you know what? It's different from the elephant one because elephant one, I can see someone voting African savannah. I can see someone voting Asian.
You got very annoyed with that.
I just felt like the forest elephant was, like it. Not many people know about it. It's definitely worth being your favorite. So I've calmed down. It's definitely worth being your favorite. It's just I can't imagine.
No one was being an edgelord about the whole thing.
Yeah. Anyway, this one. With this one, I mean, cats are cats. Like if someone
True.
was to say to me, "I don't like any of the big cats. I like Carpathian lynx or African black-footed cats best," I'd be like, "Yeah, okay, I can see that."
Okay, yeah.
So when it comes to what's your favorite big cat, yes, I have my preference, but someone could give me half an argument and I'd say I can see exactly why you like them.
Right.
So I'm good with the results. I'm good with the answers. There's a couple of answers that I'm surprised about, but we'll
All right, go
we'll
from
look into
lowest to highest.
well, the lowest, which
I'm not surprised by
I'm
this,
not
actually.
surprised by it. However, I'm going to add a vote to it if that's okay.
Does it change anything?
No, it does not. Oh, hang on. Does it? It would. It kind of does. It kind of does. So the lowest at the moment with a score of 1 vote.
Okay.
So the cat that relies most on numbers, it's got no numbers to back it up. Is the lion.
Yeah, they're a bit basic.
I feel
They're
like
good, but they're just
not basic.
overdone.
They look. I know they're very tan coloured. They're very beige to look at. Apart from the males that have the big manes, but that social structure, the social element of the lion is where I think the interest is.
Yeah,
I can
I just think they've been overdone.
For me, I agree. For me, I agree. I just don't think that they're as boring as what I sometimes make them out to be, as you would make them out to be, and other people would. I don't think. Also, I think people like Craig Bush actually ruin lions for people.
Yeah, it's true.
I do think if you know, if you're not the lay person, you know enough about big cats, and seeing someone like Craig Bush would probably very much upset you and irritate you enough to put you off them.
Yeah.
So the lion with 1, I am going to add a vote to that because clearly James Welch hasn't seen this poll, and he would vote for lions too. So. But since he didn't vote, he only gets half a vote. So 1.5 lions are still the lowest.
Still at the bottom.
The next one up is a bit of a surprise, actually. Leopard.
Yeah,
I thought
could
leopard
see
would
that.
be higher up.
Nah.
No, I think I would have changed leopard and jaguar around.
No, I could see leopards being lower
Hmm.
for the simple reason they're a bit of a forgettable big cat.
They shouldn't be.
No, they shouldn't be.
They shouldn't be.
They're so widespread and so varied in the habitats they live in, and the different, lengths of coat, the
Their
spots,
adaptability, the most adaptable cat other
but
than
they're
the
just
cougar.
all you ever see is whenever it's a documentary, it's an African leopard, and that's it. That's all you ever see.
Yes, that might be a problem. So the onus is on me to make you guys, sorry, to make the leopard more memorable in the minds of you guys next year when I come to cover them. So yeah, only 2 votes for the leopard, unfortunately. Moving up. So it's pretty close between this one and the next one. Jaguar. Jaguar scored 4 votes.
Okay.
So yeah, very popular. I'd like to think that maybe it would have got a few more votes had my creature feature on them come out before.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think people with Jaguars as well. I think the reason why people like them so much is probably because of the whole color variation, which is
But
yeah
that's it
again
with the
leopards as well. But
I
most
think it's
people
more the
tend
bite force.
true. I mean, I like them because of they're powerful animals.
They are incredibly powerful animals, but they're not quite as powerful. Apart from the bite, which is more powerful, body-wise, they're not quite as powerful as the cat that's coming in second place.
So who's got second place?
Second place with 5 votes is the tiger.
Yeah,
Which I'm trying not to grin about, but I am grinning because tiger is my favourite.
they're yet again they're like the leopard. They're a bit sort of spongy in that they malleable. They can fit into different habitats.
They're not as adaptable as leopards though. Leopards, in terms of habitat, they range from the tiger ranges from like your kind of
boreal forest. Yeah,
that's it, boreal forest, right down to tropical rainforest. So you do have that change, that variation, the adaptability in habitat, but they're not as adaptable to outside interference as leopards are. Leopards really have, especially in India, made the most of bad conditions with humans encroaching. So yeah, the tiger comes in second place, and to be honest with you, to me, it's not really a surprise. First and second place, I knew that first and second place would be these 2 cats in some.
I didn't honestly think number 1 would be
Snow leopard.
I didn't honestly think snow leopard would get it.
Snow leopard is actually quite.
I thought it would lose out to the tiger.
See, I thought it would be tiger first, snow leopard, then jaguar, then lion.
But snow leopards, yeah, they're pretty
snow
cool.
leopards, and snow leopards come in with 8 votes, 40% of people.
They just smashed it.
So, yeah, they're 3 ahead. They've got the biggest gap, I think. Let me just double check that. So 1 vote for lion, 2 votes.
Did you also include the comments that we had at the bottom there, or not? Not that it makes much of a difference.
I think we should. I will do before we get into the comments, though. I will say that there are 2 that I'm a bit surprised about. So first one is this is a little surprise because I thought that Becky Walker would have voted for leopard. She always seemed, when we worked with her, she always seemed very leopardy. I knew she liked the other big cats, but I thought she would be far more into the leopards. And then
has she surprised you with voting for a different cat?
She voted for tiger. Which, I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised about if leopard wasn't on the list, but there we go. But the bigger upset, for my part, for my opinion, is our very own Drew Owens.
Right, what's he voted?
The guy that does all the artwork, the guy who was our co-host, who we speak to at least every other day. I thought he voted for snow leopard.
I can understand that.
I thought jaguar was his favorite. I literally did jaguar. The jaguar creature feature was partly done for him. I would have done leopard.
Surprised you?
Yeah, I thought Drew was more jaguar than
turns out he's not so much for the jag.
He's not, but but I will be chasing you up, Drew, at some point to put all these big cats in one because in one artwork because it's cool. So moving on to the comments now. What I think we'll do, what we discussed, is kind of go for some of the more standout comments because this one was really more about your votes and comments. But since you commented, we'll read out a couple of them. So Philip Schofield says leopards are the most agile.
Yeah,
I'd
say so.
Leopard, snow leopard.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I could see it as much as I.
I
you
would
know,
fear one
beat the-
more than the other.
I'd fear the leopard more.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because he says something else. So leopards are the most agile. I can see where he's coming from. I think snow leopard, but I can see where he's come from. Lions are the most laid back.
Mm.
Yeah, I fancy my chances if
I
I
think
found
they're
a
the
lot
dumbest.
of failure.
I really think
Yeah.
they're not the brightest out of all of the cats.
But that's because they have to rely on others, don't they?
Maybe the
So-
maybe the ones we worked with were just a bit dim,
I
but
was
they always just reminded me of big dumb Labradors in a lot of ways.
Labrador. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Tigers are the most likely to kill you, but they're all equally amazing. Now, I agree they're all equally amazing. I agree with lions are most laid back, and I can see I can kind of see where you come from with leopards, even though I would say snow leopards equal them out. However, tigers most likely to kill you. I'm not so sure.
I'd put tigers, jaguars, and leopards in the same boat.
I would put
The
tigers.
boat of I'm not getting in that boat.
Oh yeah, I'm not getting that. But if I would put tigers and jaguars. Ooh, no, I'm not sure I'd even put them in the same boat. But either way, leopards would be my top.
Yeah,
Working with
they're smart.
leopards is like the raptors in Jurassic Park.
I think it's the only way to put it. Really.
However, I would also say to continue the Jurassic Park reference, I would say tigers. Having worked with, I've not worked with jaguars or snow leopards, but I would put tigers with as the tyrannosaurs in Jurassic Park.
Yeah, they'll kill you.
If you're there
but-
or they're out, they will kill you. But the leopards will think about it before they will plan it before they get to you. So yeah, that's that one. Few people have mentioned that jaguars have the strongest bite and the color morphs and stuff of it. But I think that was the one that stood out the most, really.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting
Yeah.
one. Right, well, that was last week's question. This week's question, based on your news article as well, about the shark. I've got I don't know whether I've said this before or not, but the question is going to be, what is the most ridiculous or funny thing that you've ever seen in the sea? I'm thinking more along the lines of people shouting shark at everything that they see and that is not a shark. I can't remember whether I've told this story or not, but if not, it fits perfectly for this situation. Sat on a jetty years ago in Australia with my dad and my brother. We were fishing. Beach full of people, swimming around, playing around the water. All of a sudden, this kid who's splashing around in the surf starts shouting, "Shark!" And everyone looks around thinking, "Oh God, someone's about to be eaten by a shark in the surf here," which also means that there's probably something hanging around eating all the fish as well. But it does happen as well. You get sharks.
Yeah.
In Australia, obviously, you get sharks everywhere, but they are known to kill and eat people there. But everyone then looked, and it wasn't a shark; it was a dolphin, just swimming in amongst all these people. There's about 2 or 3 dolphins just having a whale of a time, just scooting in between all the people in the beach. And it would have been really cool to be in the water with these dolphins just sort of swimming past you. And this kid's just shouting, "Shark, shark!" He's sort of frozen on the spot in the surf. He's only sort of up to here. And one of these dolphins just, I don't know whether it had in its mind going, "Haha, he thinks I'm a shark." It just sort of came up about that close to him and just went, right into his face. And I'm guessing the water got a lot warmer around him and probably slightly brown. But everyone on the jetty's going, "It's a dolphin, you idiot!" But yeah, he's just shouting, and I after that he's just sort of like frozen on the spot, and then they realise obviously it's a dolphin. But
missed opportunity to have a really nice moment there with nature.
Yeah, basically. I mean, even if it is a shark, that's 99% of the time they're not going to try and hunt you down in that situation. If you're standing still, you're probably fine in sort of that amount of water. I mean, saying that, I'm not advocating go and walk up to a shark because there's a chance it could bite you. But it's the same with, I don't know, there's more people killed by cows than there are by sharks every year.
Yeah,
so,
by vending machines too.
Yeah. But yes, As for funniest things, I'd say that's certainly up there. You seen anything particularly funny or memorable?
There's a couple of things that come to mind. So yeah, it's difficult to come up with a nature one because I've got plenty of ones involving people in the sea.
Yeah.
Like people posing for their the videos of people posing for these
Yeah.
photos and they get wiped out by a wave.
Always
And
the funniest.
You think that only happens on TikTok. Not so. I'm the witness that sees these things. So yeah, but the one funny thing nature oriented I can think of is going to view the seals at Mort Ho.
Oh yeah.
Mort Point, sorry. And there's loads of them. I think on this day I counted 11. And on the rock you got some hauled out and there's huge bloke. Huge he is. And he's just lying there on the rock and all the, like his harem is around
Looking like a bloated sausage.
Singing. Yeah, and he's looking like a bloated sausage. Anyway,
like me in a wetsuit.
He's clearly asleep and something bothers him. So he kind of pokes his head up. I guess he realizes it's an itch. He goes to stretch an itch and he just stretches that little bit too far and he kind of rolls. Splish. And it's the least graceful entry into water I've ever seen a seal do.
I don't think seals are capable of being graceful out of the water. In the water, fine. Out of water, they are a fat sausage that has to flop along to get into the water.
But I just remember thinking, well, I'm sure they're bouncing on many jagged rocks. If you've ever been there, you know how jagged those rocks are. I'm sure that cured the itch, but I reckon he got a few bumps, bruises, and cuts for the trouble.
Well, there you go. Whatever you've seen that was the funniest or the most ridiculous thing in the sea. I mean, you could even go as far as saying that you've been on a fishing trip and there's always those funny stories of people holding the fish they've just caught and it dropping back into the sea and them never seeing it again. People thinking that they've been able to catch all sorts of different things when all they catch is a
cold.
A cold, yeah. All those sort of different things. Let us know. And that'll be on our Facebook page where you can send us all sorts of different things. We'll also answer any of those comments down below in the comments on our YouTube page as well. So there are a multitude of ways that you can get in contact with us to basically let us know what you're doing, any interesting pictures or whatever. And that's all on our social medias where you can get in contact with us. But there is another way that you can do so as well, and that is on our Patreon. And Aaron's going to tell us a little bit about that now.
Absolutely right. Every week we like to give a little love back by shouting out the names of our Patreon supporters. And these are the wonderful cupboard dwellers who are kind enough to support us through a monetary contribution, for which we are grateful beyond words. And those people are, of course, Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Connie P, Chelsea McKee, try not to laugh at the bag falling over, Nick to Nick, and Justin Knife. Guys, your financial contributions are actively helping us here in the Natural History Cupboard in a myriad of ways. And as I say, we can't really thank you enough.
No.
Now, we appreciate all of our cupboard dwellers and everything that you do to support us, whether that's just the listening or watching, whether that's liking, sharing, and subscribing, which we really please implore you to do. And indeed, just getting word of mouth out there about us. But if you feel we've earned it and you're considering joining our Patreon, you can do so through two different options currently. That is the Nature Nerds and the Animal Ambassadors, and more on those at a later date. But for now, just once again, thank you so much to all of you for everything you do to support us.
Yes, thank you. There is, words. These aren't words, though. So
words fail.
I'll use these words to say that words fail. But thank you very much indeed to all of our Patreons. There are a multitude of other ways that, like say, Aaron said, that you can help us out that require no money, because money isn't everything. You can help us out in the simplest way possible by just listening, doing what you're doing now, viewing us on YouTube, or listening to us wherever you are getting your podcast. Telling a friend, telling an enemy, telling a penguin, tell all 18 species of penguin. Go around the whole of the Southern Ocean and maybe a little bit into the northern Pacific, to tell all of those different species, or just tell someone the next time they're talking about penguins. Hey, I know this podcast that talks about penguins. In fact, this is our first penguin species.
It is.
Yeah.
Tell the penguin keeper.
Tell a penguin keeper. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. If you go to the zoo, tell a penguin keeper. Some of them may even know us. You never know. But like us, subscribe on whatever platform you are listening or watching us on, and interact with us on social media. Helps out a massive amount as well.
Yes, it does.
So all of that interaction does a huge job. Right. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode, I think.
Yes, it does.
It's good to be back.
Yeah. Nice
it
to
feel-
have you back in the cupboard again.
Did it feel, does it feel weird now you can't stretch out? You know?
I feel like I kind of didn't like exploit your illness more by
Yeah, you should.
actually laying out
Yeah.
like on this sofa, just like kicking back completely during the recording of the last one. But it was kind of fun to have you have you on the screen and be doing it like that again. But I much prefer this,
Yes, this is much easier.
and it's much easier to edit.
Yeah, much easier. Yeah, not having to go.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Much-
you go first.
Much easier. So yeah, well, big thank you, Aaron.
Thank
And
you very much for coming back.
that's all right. And a big thank you to you at home for listening. And we will see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
Ciao.
One does not simply pick up a penguin because their bite's really bad.